Greetings. Thank you to everyone for coming out to our year-end celebration. This is Ghost Seance. This event is brought to you by Strong Women, Strange Worlds, which is a group of authors supporting authors. Our mission is to elevate voices of women and non-binary authors of science fiction, fantasy, and horror through events like our bi-monthly virtual quick read sessions. You can find out more about Strong Women, Strange Worlds by visiting our website, strongwomenstrangeworlds.weebly.com. I am your host today, Kate Pope, and you can find out more about me and all the authors participating in our extravaganza in the handout that we've prepared. It can be downloaded from our website, and we're going to send you a link via email after the party as well. Please note that recording of this session by the audience is not allowed, and recording of electronic communications, including Zoom meetings and webinars, without permission is illegal. Here's how today's event will run. As the song says, it's the most wonderful time of the year, and as that song suggests, there should be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago, blah, blah, blah. But we here at Strong Women, Strange Worlds couldn't think of a better way to do that than with a ghost seance. I have brought along 4 books today. To help us out and try and see if we can make a few calls to beyond the veil to some of the women and non-binary authors of speculative fiction that came before us. Let's all join virtual hands, take a few calming, centering breaths, and see if we can reach out. Spirits, are you here? Are you here with us, spirits? Come, speak with us. Thank you for the candle. I appreciate it. Wait. I'm sensing a presence? No. Wait. Am I sensing a presence? No. What am I sensing? It's not a presence, it's presence? That can't be right. This is what happens when you don't proofread well enough. But let's try that again, okay? Hold virtual hands. Breathe deeply. Reach out. This time I do feel an actual presence. Yes! There is a ghost. There is an author from beyond. They're trying to reach us. She's drawing me to a book. What book is it? Where do you want us to go, spirit? Oh no, I just realized my background is flipped. The ghost is pulling me to this book, America's Most Gothic. It's Leanna Renee Hieber's book, America's Most Gothic, Haunted History, Stranger Than a Fiction. Of course, we all already know that the author of fiction and nonfiction, Leanna's Haunted History of Invisible Women, co-authored with Andrea James, was a Stoker nominee, and it was an instant US bestseller. It was featured on TV shows like Mysteries at the Museum, discussing Victoria's spiritualism. Leanna works with Burrows of the Dead, telling ghost stories nationwide. We already knew this, of course. I'm only telling this for the spirits. But there's a spirit specific that's calling to me. Who is it? Spirit, who are you? It's Charlotte Bronte. Charlotte, are you here?
I suppose I am.
Charlotte, have you come to share a story with us?
Well, of course.
Speak.
Hello. Evidently you all know me. I'm quite honored that you continue to read my book, Jane Eyre being the one that you seem to focus on. That's very good. It was in fact popular in my day, and my name wasn't, of course, attached to it at the beginning. It was Cara Bell. That was my pseudonym. All of my sisters and my surviving sisters, that is, we all wrote books. We all wrote Gothic novels. And evidently, at least in terms of how I've been referred to in this book that came through the ether, this America's Most Gothic, it's very nice of them to have called me a foremother, along with Mary Shelley, of course, and my sisters, Emily and Anne, as those who formed what we understand of the Gothic novels. Now, of course, Emily and Anne's Gothic novels are very different than mine, but I would like to share with you a little bit of why Jane Eyre became such a reference point in a great deal of discussion of Gothic fiction. Um, in a Gothic, sometimes there is a ghost, a true ghost, a real ghost. And then sometimes there is just a bit of imagination. So you decide for yourself which this is. From the beginning of my now very famous book. Thank you. Daylight began to forsake the Red Room. It was past 4 o'clock, and the beclouded afternoon was tending to drear twilight. I heard the rain still beating continuously on the staircase window, and the wind howling in the grove behind the hall. I grew by degrees cold as a stone, and then my courage sank. My habitual mood of humiliation, self-doubt, forlorn depression fell damp on the embers of my decaying ire. All said I was wicked, and perhaps I might be so. What thought had I been but just conceiving of starving myself to death? That certainly was a crime, and was I fit to die? Or was it the vault on the chancel of Gateshead Church, an inviting bourne? In such vault, I had been told, did Mr. Reed lie buried, and led by this thought to recall his idea, I dwelt on it with gathering dread. I could not remember him, but I knew that he was my own uncle, my mother's brother, that he had taken me when a parentless infant to his house, and that in his last moments he had required a promise of Mrs. Reed that she would rear and maintain me as one of her own children. Mrs. Reed had probably considered she had kept this promise, and so she had, I dare say, as well as her nature would permit her. But how could she really, like an interloper, not of her race and unconnected with her, after her husband's death by any tie? It must have been most irksome to find herself bound by a hard-wrung pledge to stand instead of a parent to a strange child she could not love, and to see an uncongenial alien permanently intruded on her own family group. A singular notion dawned upon me. I doubted not, never doubted, that if Mr. Reed had been alive, he would have treated me kindly. And now, as I sat looking at the white bed and overshadowed walls, occasionally also turning a fascinated eye towards the dimly gleaming mirror, I began to recall what I had heard of dead men, troubled in their graves by the violation of their last wishes, revisiting the earth to punish the perjured and avenge the oppressed, and I thought Mr. Reed's spirit, harassed by the wrongs of his sister's child, might quit its abode, whether in the church vault or in the unknown world of the departed, and rise before me in this chamber. I wiped my tears and hushed my sobs, fearful lest any sign of violent grief might waken a preternatural force to comfort me, or elicit from the gloom some haloed face bending over me with strange pity. This idea, consolatory in theory, I felt would be terrible if realized. With all my might, I endeavored to stifle it. I endeavored to be firm. Shaking my hair from my eyes, I lifted my head and tried to look boldly round the dark room. At this moment, a light gleamed on the wall. What was it? I asked myself. A ray from the moon penetrating some aperture in the blind? No, moonlight was still, and this stirred. While I gazed, it glided up to the ceiling and quivered over my head. I can now conjecture readily that this streak of light was, in all likelihood, a gleam from a lantern, carried by someone across the lawn. But then, prepared as my mind was for horror, shaken as my nerves were by agitation, I thought the swift, darting beam was a herald of some coming vision from another world. My heart beat thick, my head grew hot, a sound filled my ears which I deemed the rushing of wings. Something seemed near me. I was oppressed, suffocated. Endurance broke down. I uttered a wild, involuntary cry. I rushed to the door and shook the lock in desperate effort. Steps came running along the outer passage. The key turned. Bessie and Abbot entered. "Miss Eyre, are you ill?" said Bessie. "What a dreadful noise! It went right quite through me." exclaimed Abbott. "Take me out! Let me go into the nursery," was my cry. "What for? Are you hurt? Have you seen something?" again demanded Bessie. "Oh, I saw a light, and I thought a ghost would come." I had now got hold of Bessie's hand, and she did not snatch it from me. "She has screamed on purpose," declared Abbott in some disgust. "And what a scream! If she had been in great pain, one would have excused it, but she only wanted to bring us all here. I know her naughty tricks." "What is all this?" demanded another voice peremptorily, and Mrs. Reed came along the corridor, her cap flying wide, her gown rustling stormily. "Abbott and Bessie, I believe I gave orders that Jane Eyre should be left in the red room till I came to her myself." "Miss Jade screamed so loud, ma'am," pleaded Bessie. "Let her go," was the only answer. "Loose Bessie's hands, child. You cannot succeed in getting out by these means, rest assured. I abhor artifice, particularly in children. It is my duty to show you that tricks will not answer. You will now stay here an hour longer, and it is only on condition of perfect submission and stillness that I shall liberate you then." "Oh, aunt, have pity, forgive me. I cannot endure it. Let me be punished some other way. I shall be killed if—" "Silence!" This violence is almost repulsive, and so no doubt she felt it. I was a precocious actress in her eyes. She sincerely looked on me as a compound of virulent passions, mean spirit, and dangerous duplicity. Bessie and Abbott having retreated, Mrs. Reed, impatient of my now frantic anguish and wild sobs, abruptly thrust me back and locked me in without further parley. I heard her sweeping away, and soon after she was gone, I suppose I had a species of fit. Unconsciousness closed the scene. And so shall I, with all the appropriate theatrics. Thank you.
Thank you, spirits. But now it is time for you to return. Goodbye. Now that a connection has been established and I've managed to get my background appropriately framed, I hope that another author from beyond will come to us. Authors, spirits, reach out. Please speak with us. And yes, I feel another soul reaching out towards me. And again, she's pulling me towards a book. What book? What book is calling to you, spirit? Oh! She's calling me towards this book. It's Tavistock Galleria. And the story within it, the story that's being written by Elizabeth Davis. Yes, yes, we know. Elizabeth Davis, the second generation writer living in Dayton, Ohio, where they live with their spouse and their 2 cats. And they've never lost any of them into ravenous corn noises. That's right. The spirit knows that they can be found at deadfishbooks.com when they aren't busy creating beautiful nightmares. We know that too, spirit. But who are you? Your name starts with a C? No, a B. Bessie? Bessie Kyffin-Taylor? Bessie, come forth. Come from the shadows. Share with us.
Well, hello there, everyone. My name's Bessie Kyffin-Taylor. And give me a moment. I'm getting used to this body, and the accent's not quite on point. Do you know how hard it is to work a mouth when you haven't had one for nearly 100 years? Absolutely atrocious. Anyway, I'm Bessie Kyffin-Taylor, and that's the most anyone knows about me. And, well, I'm not going to ruin the mystery. I'll revealing additional facts, so I'll give you what everybody knows, which is that my husband comes from rather tiresome lineage of British aristocracy and other sordid, forgotten figures of history, and that I wrote a book called Out of the Silence, a collection of ghost stories that still thrill and chill to this day, published in the 1920s. and then I died soon after. What did I do? What did I enjoy? No one's fully sure. There's even been rumors of me having another book called Rosemary, though no one's managed to track that down yet. Um, but while I managed to find this vessel, because we both love abandoned buildings, Tavistock Galleria is an anthology dedicated to abandoned mall, real life. And this story is a love letter as much as it is a ghost story to my love of abandoned buildings. In fact, it opens with the heroine discussing how much she loves breaking and entering. And just letting her imagination roam free while exploring these forgotten homes of yesteryear. But that's not what you guys have come here for. You've come here for a ghost story. And so I will give you an excerpt from Two Red Little Shoes. While it may not be the most technically proficient of my stories, or most chilling, it's one that you can easily find online with the rest of my work. And so now we will go and go into this world in which we start with an abandoned house. I felt like this as I sat gazing at the house I had long waited to inspect. But having attained my desire, I lingered, even though longing to get inside. It was a dull red brick house with heavy windows, but all flat, not a bay window or jutting corner anywhere. Only the front door broke the monotony, it having a curious porch, 2 sides glass, with a heavy oak door in the center. The bell pull attracted my eye next. There was a heavy copper chain, ingrained with H in many places, a handle of horse shape, of rusty iron. I wondered if that had been the original, or whether some inmate with a tendency toward superstition had hung it there. From my comfortable seat, I let my gaze wander to and fro from window to window, trying to picture the rooms within, yet still putting off my attempt to enter. No thought of being unable to do so entered my mind, for by some means or other I tend to accomplish what to me was a definite purpose. I would eat my lunch first, I decided, then find a way indoors, and later, as it grew cooler, wander into the garden. It was gloriously still there under the beech tree, so still that I grew drowsy and all but fell asleep, though that would be a waste of time, I thought, so roused myself with an effort and drew near to the house. I believed in my heart I feared being foiled, my desire, and there was one reason why I delayed, but time, relentless always, was passing along, and I must really make a start. I peered through the windows to the right door. Oh, lovely, I exclaimed, and hurriedly peeped at those on the other side of the door. What a contrast, I thought. I must get in. So almost ran around the back of the house in my eagerness. Window after window I tried to bang, but at last caught sight of one with a broken hasp. Then, using a penknife and a sharp-edged stone, I managed to sufficiently get my fingers in and lift it up, then jumping onto the sill. I crept through, closing the window softly behind me. I found myself in a big, lofty kitchen, fine as a furniture of any kind, though, oddly enough, 2 little dish covers still hung in the walls. From there I wandered along a stone passage, which had many doors. I don't mean doors opening to them, but heavy doors across them, every few yards, as if the dwellers in the house had attended cutting off all sound from the kitchen. Nemesis being heard in other parts of the house. The indoor was cedar wood, and as I closed it, I realized that the living room seemed quite in another world. I entered a room to the right of the front door, the room which had caused me to exclaim lovely when I peered through its windows. It certainly was a beautiful room, long and low, with walls of white and gold, with a frieze of laughing cupids, driving each other with chains of pink roses. This room was likewise devoid of furniture except for 2 very small chairs, one upholstered in faded blue, the other in tatters of pink. I smiled and supposed they were too small to bother to remove, Nor the little folks to whom they once belonged have long since outgrown them. I loved the laughing cupids and pictured the gay rebels they must have looked down upon before the pink of their roses faded. There was another door leading from this room. It was slightly ajar, so I peeped in before continuing my wandering on the other side of the front door. I say at once emphatically and decidedly, I did not like it. It was a small, round room with 3 windows, none of which one could see through without getting onto a chair. The walls were slate-colored, floor was stone. There wasn't a fireplace, but pushed against the wall were 2 little high wooden stools. To each stool was attached a long, thin steel chain. I didn't like it. The stools looked as if 2 small dogs might have been fastened there and made to sit still. I lifted hurriedly and entered the room on the other side of the front door. This had quite a lot of furniture and, to my amazement, many toys. There was a dappled, well-worn rocking horse, not one of the modern apologies for a rocking horse, a thing on patent springs which only wobbles to and from perfect safety. Oh no, this was a real old-fashioned G, which really rocked until you were rather in danger of slipping over its scanty tail or sliding forward to grasp its cocked-up ears. There was a broken doll, too, with what had been a pretty face, not a monstrosity, or a fat policeman with a red nose, or a hideous gollywog. There was a battered engine, some bricks, and on the hearth a little pair of scarlet shoes. I picked those up and fell to wondering what little Adam had worn them. Someone had once had happy times in this room of toys, I thought. I had spent a long time in few rooms I had prowled through, and already long shadows were dimming the bright glare of the sun. I glanced at my watch and decided I would move on to the garden. The house was beginning to feel chilly, that odd chillness of a house, long, tenantless, and fireless. I would come again tomorrow, and then explore upstairs. But now would just have one peep at the garden, then trot homewards. The room of toys held me somehow, and I was loath to leave it. And the little red shoes, I had a wild desire to put those in my pocket. Surely no one would miss them, and oh well, I liked to handle them and imagine the wee soft pink feet they had covered. They couldn't be stealing, I argued, for by the dust on them they must have been long lying unthought of. Besides, I would bring them back tomorrow. And now, but just for tonight, I wanted them. So I took them in my hand as I strolled from the room to commence retracing my steps along the corridor of many doors. Just as I closed the door behind me, I heard a sound that always had the power to arrest my steps. I heard a long-drawn, whimpering cry of a little child. There is a caretaker in a family, I said out loud. How stupid of me not to have thought of it, and looked more carefully before I made the house so very much my own. I went through another door. I heard the cry again. I was closer to the sound, or was it nearer to me? I hurried a little, slipping the little red shoes into my pocket for safety. I didn't want to be called a thief. Besides, I would bring them back tomorrow. I passed through the last door before the kitchen, and again a long whimpering cry broke the silence. So close to me, so close. I felt as if I had to stretch out my hand to touch the troubled little child. I quickened my steps, raised the window, and slipped through, fully intending to explore the back premises to discover the whereabouts of the worthy caretaker and her fractious child. I stood for an instant when safely near the window, and as I stood there I heard distinctly, unmistakably, the whimpering cry and the soft tapping of tiny baby fingers on the window pane, tapping as if they could scarcely reach, but tapping insistently and clearly, and always, always the same little wailing cry. And that's all the time I have with you today, my darlings. I mean, these houses and buildings are not going to break and enter themselves now, are they?
Ah, thank you, spirits. Thank you, Bessie. Goodbye. Safe returns to the great beyond. I am amazed with all of the success that we have had. But look, there is still time. The hour is not yet 12 Eastern. We must continue. We must try again. Spirits, come to me. Speak with me, foremothers of speculative fiction. Please reach out. Wait. I'm sensing another spirit. Spirit, where? What is calling you? Which book are you being drawn to? Is it America's Gothic again? No. No, and it's not Tavistock Galleria. We know Bessie is still currently trying to do a B&E beyond the grave. No, it's Souls. It's the short story collection by Terri Bruce, who writes hard to classify fantasy and science fiction stories that explore the supernatural side of everyday things. Of course, we, who have access to our modern conveniences, can find her books in paperback and ebooks wherever books are sold. But this spirit has reached beyond. Who is it? Spirit, who are you? Is it Charlotte Bronte? No, she doesn't really, that's not her genre. But it is, I do feel a C. It's St. Clair? Maggie? Maddie? Margaret! It's Margaret St. Clair. Margaret, come. What have you to share with us?
Hello, friends. I'm so happy to be here today. I'm American science fiction and fantasy writer Margaret St. Clair. I was most active in the 1950s through the 1970s, sadly having passed away in 1995. I was drawn here today to the mortal realm by the similarities between my short fiction works and the short fiction works of American science fiction and fantasy author Terri Bruce. Both of our bodies of short story work combine humor and satire with a bit of melancholy and less pew-pew laser beams and roar dragons. Our works are more literary meditations on the human condition. And if there happens to be an artist who builds worlds or a down-on-their-luck goddess who lives next door, well, so be it. And if you'll indulge me, my friends, I'd like to share with you today a little bit from one of my short stories titled Change the Sky. This story first appeared in print in the magazine of science fiction and fantasy in 1955 under the pseudonym Ida Seabright. I often had two stories in the magazine in the same edition, and the publisher and the editor did not like to publish two stories by the same author in an edition. So I used the pseudonym to get around that fact. What fun! And other than a recent republication in Journey Press's Rediscovery Volume 2, this story last appeared in print in 1975. So if you'll indulge me, friends, I'll read to you a little bit from this story. It would be an expensive world to make, said the artist. He rolled a lump of play putty into a rope, coiled it up on itself, and whacked it down on his drawing board. From what you say, you'd want a lot of flowers. And women. That would come high. It isn't women I want, Pendleton said stiffly and a little wearily. I've been to many worlds with beautiful, willing women. I'm not asking you to make me some sort of lustful paradise. What I'm hunting is a place that's so beautiful, or so winning, or so right that I'll feel this is the place in the whole universe that I love best. This is home. The artist bounced his putty on the floor a couple of times. Tell me about yourself, he said without looking up. I don't get many clients like you know. Most of them are people who aren't physically able to go starside and visit the worlds in person. It's unusual for somebody to come in here who's done much traveling. A shadow crossed Pendleton's face. There was no use in telling the artist, but he himself wouldn't be physically able to go from world to world much longer, hunting the one right place. He'd had deceleration sickness badly in his last berth when he was a purser on the Tyche. 2 more trips and he'd be done for. If he hadn't found what he was looking for by then, it was that knowledge that had brought him into the artist's atelier. I've spent most of my life in space, he said unwillingly. There isn't really much to tell. The artist raised one eyebrow. I doubt that. For example, I gather you're a traveled person. Which one of the various worlds you've visited has seemed to you the most beautiful, or the most appealing, or interesting, and so on? Genlis is the most beautiful by far, Pendleton answered. It's a water world with deep green, swelling, foam-laden seas and a sky so intensely blue that it's almost purple. On the islands, there are a few islands. Tall, graceful trees like palms lean into the wind, and the perfume of the flowers is so sweet it makes you dizzy. There are flowers everywhere. They say that no matter how far you get from land on Genlis, you can always smell the flowers. The air is soft and yet fresh, and when the wind blows against your face or body, you feel the skin tingle with delight. Nothing could be more beautiful than Genlis. But there aren't many people on that world, and after I'd been there a few days, I felt lonely. I was glad to get back to the ship. So perhaps it wasn't your kind of beauty, said the artist. He was punching crescents with his thumbnail in his putty lump. Which of the worlds you visited seemed to you the most interesting? Oh, Cruor, I think. It's a long way from its primary, and there's nothing on its surface but snow and ice. The snow is very soft for some reason, and when the wind blows, there's a great deal of wind. It carves the snow into caves and grottos and long pointed arches that collapse if you stamp your foot. The nights on Cruor are very bright. There's an ionizing layer in the atmosphere that gives the sky a constant glow like a night with a full moon on Earth. When the snow arches and caves sparkle in the glow like a million diamonds, it's a fine sight. Then the green sun comes up and the surface of the snow caves melt a little and turns to ice. You should see the sparkle then. It almost blinds you. Usually it snows again before night. Cruor is a most interesting place. You say it was interesting, but you seem to have thought it was beautiful, the artist commented. He had shaped his lump of play putty into the torso of a tiny woman, round breasts, dimpled belly, long full thighs. Now, which of the worlds you visited seemed to you the most appealing? Gave you the most nearly the sensation that I gather you're looking for. There was a long pause. The body of the miniature woman the artist had shaped sank slowly back into the play putty as the resilient stuff resumed its natural globular shape. I've liked a lot of places, Pendleton said at last. There was a world called Flagra that was nothing but volcanoes and geysers. The planet's magnetic field was funny, and sometimes an eruption from one of the geysers would just go on up. Hours later, you might be hit in the back of the neck by an ice spray. But I suppose that's not what you meant. No, the artist said. His eye swept Pendleton's face. The older man's gray cheeks colored faintly. He rubbed his forehead with one hand. Well, there was Asterope, he said. I don't know what I liked about it, actually. It was quite an ordinary world. But there was a great deal of electrical activity on the planet, and there'd be a dozen thunderstorms in 24 hours. Once I was out in one of them at night. I took cover in a sort of hollow in a cliff and watched the lightning. There'd be a great flash, and the sky would turn blue-black. The sky of Asterope was very dark, with almost no stars, and the leaves of a funny little tree with white leaves would blaze out in the flash like the stars that were missing in the sky. Then it would be dark again until the next flash. Asterope wasn't an appealing world like Flagra, but during that storm I liked it. I almost felt at home then. Uh-huh, said the artist. He had put down his lump of play putty and was drawing something on a piece of paper with a brush. When Pendleton tried to see what it was, the artist covered it quickly with one hand. You said something about Earth. Have you spent much time here? No, I was nearly 30 when I came here for the first time. That's unusual. Were you born on one of the colonial planets? No, I was born on a spaceship, and I'd never set foot on anything larger than an asteroid until I was 19. Go on, please. This is the sort of background stuff I've got to have. Well, my mother died when I was 2. Of course I don't remember her. I suppose she must have been the sort of person my father was. I don't imagine she wanted a child very much. The artist crumpled up the sketch he had made. Go on, Mr. Pendleton. What was your father like? Well, I haven't thought about him in years. He was a sort of fanatic. He wasn't unkind to me, actually, but he was a strict disciplinarian and reserved and remote. What was he a fanatic about? Pendleton laughed. As I said, I hadn't thought of him in years. Why, he had a theory that the culture of the whole solar system was derived from Ceres, the planet of Aldebaran, originally, and he went from asteroid to asteroid looking for evidence to prove it. I understand that historians consider the theory quite preposterous, but father had a private income large enough to let him indulge his whims. As I said, he spent his time searching asteroids. How did he die? The artist asked softly. Pendleton gave a sort of start. He glanced sharply at the artist, but the younger man was looking down at another sketch he had begun to brush. I can't imagine why you'd want to know that, he observed. What's that? Oh, dear friends, I feel my connection to the mortal realm is fading, and I must now return to whence I came. If you wish to know if Pendleton finds the world he's looking for, you'll have to read the rest of this story yourself. I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful holiday season.
Ah, goodbye. Thank you, Margaret St. Clair. And now I can feel our connection. It's fading, but I'm not ready to leave it just yet. Deep breaths, everyone. Let's try at least one more. I'm feeling two. Two spirits are calling to me. Oh, first spirit, tell me, what is your message? You're trying to reach me about my car's extended warranty. Begone, foul telemarketer. You aren't who we are here for. But who was behind you? It was someone calling to me about fairy tales? Could they be referencing Cari Lyn Jones' latest collection, Seven Sisters Fairy Tales? We all know Cari Lyn Jones grew up in a rural community on the east coast of South Florida, and lives there still with her husband, daughter, and an ever-growing menagerie of helpful animals. Spirit, are you drawn to those animals? Who are you? It's Diff? No, not Diff, just the E. E. Nesbit? Are you there? Come out of the darkness and share with us.
Yes, my name is Edith Nesbit, and I was born in the world on August 15th, 1858. My life was a tumultuous one. I was an opinionated woman and a crafter of tales. In this, Cari and I have much in common. So while I'm once again on the mortal plane, I will tell you a tale, the tale of the Island of the Nine Whirlpools from the Book of Dragons, a book which I dedicated to Rosamond, my very good friend Alice's daughter, whom I had no choice but to adopt. Why did I have to adopt her, you might ask? Well, because her father was my husband, Herbert. I told you my life was tumultuous. The dark arch that led to the witch's cave was with black and yellow fringe of live snakes. As the queen went in, keeping carefully in the middle of the arch, all of the snakes lifted their wicked, flat heads and stared at her with their wicked yellow eyes. You know, it is not good manners to stare, even at royalty, except, of course, for cats. And the snakes had been so badly brought up that they had even put their tongues out at the poor lady. Nasty, thin, sharp tongues they were, too. Now, the queen's husband was, of course, the king, and besides being a king, he was an enchanter, and considered to be quite at the top of his profession. So he was very wise, and he knew that when kings and queens want children, the queen always goes to see a witch. So he gave the queen the witch's address, and the queen called on her, though she was very frightened and did not like it at all. The witch was sitting by a fire of sticks, stirring something bubbly in a shiny cup. "What do you want, my dear?" she said to the queen. "Oh, if you please," said the queen, "I want a baby, a very nice one. We don't want any expense spared. My husband said—" "Oh, yes," said the witch, "I know all about him. And so you want a child. Do you know it will bring you sorrow?" "It will bring me joy first," said the queen. "Great sorrow," said the witch. "Greater joy," said the queen. Then the witch said, "Well, have it your own way. I suppose it is as much as your place is worth to go back without it." "The king would be very much annoyed," said the poor queen. "Well, well," said the witch, "what will you give me for the child?" "Anything you ask for, and all I have," said the queen. "Then give me your gold crown." The queen took it off quickly. "And your necklace of blue sapphires." The queen unfastened it. "And your pearl bracelets." The queen unclasped them. "Be clasps." And the queen undid the clasps. "Now the lilies from your breast." The queen gathered together the lilies. "And the diamonds on your little bright shoe buckles." The queen pulled off her shoes. Then the witch stirred the stuff that was in the cauldron, and one by one she threw in the gold crown and the sapphire necklace and the pearl bracelets and the ruby clasps and the diamonds of the little bright shoe buckles, and last of all, she threw in the lilies. The stuff in the cauldron boiled up in foaming flashes of yellow and blue and red and white and silver, and sent out a sweet scent, and presently the witch poured it out into a pot and set it to cool in the doorway among the snakes. Then she said to the queen, "Your child will have hair as golden as your crown, eyes as blue as your sapphires. The red of your rubies will lie on her lips, and its skin will be clear and pale as your pearls. Its soul will be white and sweet as your lilies. Its will be no clearer than its wits." "Oh, thank you," said the queen. "And when will it come?" "You will find it when you get home." "And won't you have something for yourself?" asked the queen. "Any little thing you fancy. Would you like a country or a sack of jewels?" "Nothing, thank you," said the witch. "I could make more diamonds in a day than I would wear in a year." "Well, do let me do a little something for you," the queen went on. "Aren't you tired of being a witch? Wouldn't you like to be a duchess or a princess or something like that?" "There is one thing I should rather like," said the witch, "but it's hard to get in my trade." "Oh, tell me what," said the queen. "I should like someone to love me," said the witch. The queen threw her arms around the witch's neck and kissed her 100 times. "Why," she said, "I love you better than my life. You've given me the baby, and the baby shall love you too." "Perhaps it will," said the witch, "and when the sorrow comes, send for me. Each of your 50 kisses will be me to you. Now drink up your medicine, there's a dear, and run along home." So the queen drank the stuff in the pot, which was quite cool by this time, and she went out under the fringe of snakes, and they all behaved like good Sunday school children. Some of them even tried to drop a curtsy to her as she went by, though that is not as easy when you are hanging wrong way up by your tail. But the snakes knew the queen was friends with their mistress, so of course they had to do their best to be civil. When the queen got home, sure enough, there was the baby lying in the cradle with the royal arms blazoned on it, crying as naturally as possible. It had a pink ribbons to tie up its sleeves, so the queen knew at once it was a girl. And when the king knew, he tore his black hair with fury. "Oh, you silly, silly queen," he said. "Why didn't I marry a clever lady? Did you think I went to all that trouble and expense of sending you to a witch to get a girl? You knew well enough it was a boy I wanted, a boy, an heir, a prince, to learn all my magic and to rule the kingdom after me. I'll bet a crown, my crown," he said. "You never even thought to tell the witch what kind you wanted, did you now?" And the queen hung her head and had to confess she had only asked for a child. "Very well, madam," said the king. "Very well, you have it your way, and make the most of your daughter while she is a child." The queen did. All the years of her life had never held half so much happiness as now lived in each of the moments when she held her little baby in her arms. And the years went on, and the king grew more and more clever at magic, and more disagreeable at home, and the princess grew more beautiful and more dear every day she lived. The queen and the princess were feeding the goldfish in the courtyard fountains with crumbs from the princess's 18th birthday cake when the king came into the courtyard, looking all black as thunder, and his black raven hopping up after him. He shook his as indeed he generally did whenever he met them, for he was not a king with pretty home manners. The raven sat down at the edge of the marble basin and tried to peck at the goldfish. It was all he could do to show that he was in the same temper as his master. "A girl indeed," said the king angrily. "I wonder you dare look at me in the face when you remember all your silliness that spoiled everything." "You oughtn't speak to my mother like that," said the princess. She was 18, and it came to her suddenly and all in a moment that she was grown up, so she spoke out. The king could not utter a word for several minutes. He was too angry. "Ah, do you hear that? It's the ringing of the dead man's bells, calling me back from this world. So, I'm afraid, my dears, I must find you. The queen's fate and that of her daughter on your own. I can tell you this of a certain. They are sure to prevail. Great powers on their side, the power of love and the power of arithmetic.
Ah, fare thee well, spirit. Thank you for sharing with us. And alas, my dear audience, our time communing with the other side has ended, and our connection to those that came before us has been broken. At least until we pick up the books that they have published and are able to immerse ourselves in their works and worlds again. That's all the time we have here. And thank you so much to everyone who came out to our ghost seance. We hope you had as much fun as we did.